Hello, we're doing checkpoint 1.22 from section 1.3. They want us to describe the relationship of the graphs of f of x is equal to 3 sine 4x minus 5 and compare that with the sine x. So let's take a look at the sine x graph first, and what I want to do here is just focus on a small part of the sine x graph. And the small part that I want to focus on is just essentially one period. And this is 2 pi, because we know that the period is 2 pi. The height here goes as high as 1, as low as -1, so it goes between 1 and 1. We have the middle, the midline, I'll call it, is going to be 0. And a couple of other important points, the midpoint at pi. It attains a maximum here at pi over 2 and a minimum here at 3 pi over 2. So that is your graph. And again, I want to focus on the idea that this is contained in a box or a frame. And that frame, if I want to redraw that frame over here, has a couple of important aspects to it. That frame has a starting point and ending point on the midline. So let's call this midline or mid. And for the sine function starts and ends at the midline. Now it has also a midpoint, the middle of the point, and that crosses here, and then it has a maximum and a minimum at those values. All right. Now let's identify these things. Aside from the midline over here, we have what's called the amplitude. So the amplitude is from the midline, how far does it go to the top and to the bottom of the graph? And that's going to be described by the amplitude. And what else? We know that this whole thing here is the period. We want the period to go, we want the graph to complete the cycle in this period. And the period is going to be given by 2 pi over b. We'll talk about what a, b, and the other variables are. The midline, by the way, is going to be given by d. And then in this particular problem, it does not have the idea of a shift, a horizontal shift, or horizontal stretching, I mean. So we won't worry. Nope, shift. I meant shift, horizontal shift. Because we do have a stretching, and the stretching happens by the period. But we don't have the, the horizontal shifting, so we won't worry about that. Okay, so again, this is y is equal to sine x. And now what we want to do is we want to consider our new function f of x is equal to 3 sine 4x minus 5. All right, and what we can do is we can identify the values that we were just mentioning up here in this box, and the value of a is going to be given by the coefficient in front, and so in that case it's a 3. The new midpoint, the midline, the new midline is going to be the value d, and then the period is going to be 2 pi over b, where b is going to be the coefficient of the x. Now once you find your period, we didn't really talk about this much, but once you find your period, you want to figure out halfway through the period to get your midpoint, and then you want to find another halfway here and another halfway here between there and there. And so that's going to determine your max and your minimum. Okay. All right. So let's do that then. We got our A. The amplitude is going to be 3. So this thing's going to be stretch up 3. By the way, if this amplitude A is negative, then the minimum or the maximum up here would actually be a minimum, and this minimum in the 3/4 of the way would actually be a maximum. Okay, but in our problem it's positive, so we'll just leave it at that. The D here is -5, which means we have to take this thing and shift it down -5. And then the B here, well, let's figure out the period, which is 2 pi over 4, which is pi over 2. So we have to complete one whole cycle of this within pi over 2. So you can imagine this thing is going to be squished. Now I'm going to draw the graph, but I'm going to draw it with the midpoint first, and then, well, actually we can draw it with the graph like we're ready to go. All right, so we know that we're going to start at 0 at the y-axis, and we know that the new midline is going to be -5. So I'm going to draw the x-axis up here because I know I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is 5 here. So this is going to be my new midline, and then the amplitude is 3, so I'm going to go 3 units up. 4, 1, 2, 3. So this is going to be 4, 3. This is going to be -5, -2, and then 3 down, -6, -7, -8. Okay, so this is going to be my new top and my new bottom of the frame. So top of the frame, bottom of the frame, top of the frame, bottom of the frame. Next is going to be my period. My period is going to be pi over 2. So I'm going to finish my sine function by the time I get to pi over 2. Okay, so like I said, this is pi over 2. So if we were to draw it with scale to this, that means it's going to be really compressed. Our one cycle is going to be really compressed within a pi over 2. But here we're stretching it out a little bit. Okay. Now that we have those values, we want to find the middle between 0 and pi over 2. Half of that is pi over 4. And then we want to find the quarter of the way. So half between 0 and pi over 4 is pi over 8. So we have a pi over 8. This is going to be our maximum. And then pi over 4 is going to be middle. And then this number over here between pi over 4 and pi over 2 is going to be our minimum. And what is that? This is going to be 1 pi, 2 pi over, so 1 pi over 8, 2 pi over 8, 3 pi over 8. And 4 pi over 8 is pi over 2. So those are the values that we have. Okay. All right, now the graph, this is going to be, it's going to start at 5 here, or -5, and then here it's going to go up to -2 by the time we get to pi over 8. We're going to be back here at the midline at pi over 4, and then pi over 3 we're down at the bottom, and then at pi over 2 we will finish our whole cycle. All right. And we just connect the dots. We don't connect it with straight lines. This is, after all, a sine function, so we want to draw the curves of the sine. And then it should look something like this. All right. I would encourage you to draw both these functions in Desmos, both the sine x function and this function, and see how that looks like in your in the computer. And notice that, again, this is going to be squished and down below and all that stuff. Okay, that's it. I hope that helps. Good luck.